Hi, I'm Rojo, and today I'm going to be looking at TSM versus Cloud9. Let me just move myself. There it is. TSM versus Cloud9, their Game 4 match. Or Game 4 in their match. In the playoffs for the final world spot. This is match point for TSM. Ends up, they win the series off of this game. Picking this one specifically because I think that this was the one game where you could probably argue that Cloud9 underperformed individually. Um, I think the other games were much closer to their level. I don't want to needlessly insult them, despite the fact that there's no reason to believe that they would ever see this. But uh, I don't have a reason to think that they played much worse in the other three games. I think that if you contrast the games, it was mostly about draft. And this one, interestingly enough, I think you could probably argue the same, but this one was a little more up in the air for me when I first watched it, so we're watching it now, and think we can glean from it. So, obviously, we're going to look at the draft, and in the order that it came out. So, Callista, Olaf, Twisted Fate banned versus a Nidalee, Set, and Caitlyn ban. Caitlyn's obvious. I think that the Olaf is obvious. There's really nothing to say there. Set was something that Cloud9 prioritized going into the other games that they were on blue side, so I can see them maybe thinking that Set is a super high priority pick against TSM, so this is probably why it's getting banned. Same thing with the Nidalee. They seem to be not willing to leave it up. Not entirely sure what the reason would be. I mean, other than that Spica is willing to play it. Is very good at helping topside, and based on the rest of the games, you'd expect, I guess, that might mean you would look for a strong topside top laner, so you can capitalize off of Nidalee, but I mean, that didn't really pan out anyway, so whatever. Twisted Fate being banned away is interesting. Doesn't seem to be I mean, it's a good value pick for Niski, but it was also a good value pick for Bjergsen. It was probably the case of if we leave it up, it's gonna end up getting picked on 1-2. So because we're not picking it first, is probably the actual thinking. Same thing with Callista, most likely. I think Callista would have been really good for Cloud9, so getting rid of it, not allowing it, is the best choice. And we look at the picks. So Senna was something that was fairly hotly contested in this series. I think it's just a good general AE carry. It generally can either be stable in lanes or wins them. I guess it can depend on the support matchup. It also allows you to play top centric without having to focus a lot of your draft on it, because it can use its ultimate on the top side of the map without having to move. And so it can also stick around during Herald plays, or if it wants to flip onto the other side of the map to rotate against something or to claim an objective, maybe while Dragon is coming up or something. If they want to play opposite, they can use the Senna to keep it in a safe distance away, get it the gold and experience it needs, and then use the Dawning Shadow to affect whatever is happening on the opposite side of the map. Then Cloud9, in what was a very strange, this was, I think, an insta lock. Like they got to pick and they were just like, Lucian, Evelyn, you go. And it was a very weird thing. Like they instantly picked these, it seemed. The Lucian and Evelyn were picks from the previous game, but they were picks by TSM. Maybe the idea is If we leave these up, or we leave similar, if they leave these up, then these are gonna get picked right here. I can kind of see that logic, which I guess tells me that Cloud9 don't really have a good answer into Evelynn and don't really have a good answer into Lucian. Um, Lucian is able to be flexed into 3 roles. So there is some versatility in this pick. Um, it's just a dominant pick that allows you to win lane. It's not necessarily going to do much outside of that. If Lucian has a dominant lead, then it can kind of progress that across the map, or be a side lane threat even on its own. But not necessarily a center point of a draft, unless having a really strong laning phase is the center point of your draft. And when you have Evelynn, I guess you could argue that is exactly what they're looking for, right? Evelynn is something that really, really likes having dominant lanes, so that she can farm to where she's perfectly fine, and then finally she can come out of the jungle like this super powered monster that just one shots people. Um, Still a strange pick, given that there didn't seem to be any indication that Cloud9 were going to play this, and then they just insta-locked them out of nowhere. Then TSM pick Skarner and Rakan, which are definitely interesting choices. Not really that much to say about them. I feel like Skarner actually isn't super great. I guess he can out-duel the Evelynn early on, definitely, and then the idea is that maybe Skarner can kind of enter the jungle and affect Evelynn fairly freely without risking too much, and lockdown point and click CC helps you against nothing that they've shown so far, because at this point only Cloud9 has shown, the Cloud9 have only shown Lucian and Evelynn, so I don't know what the Skarner was in response to, or um, what it's actually trying to accomplish, other than of course as a pick against the Evelynn. I don't know if it's like the counter pick, but that's something that I'll look into as the game kind of unfolds. Um, the Rakan, I mean, Bifrost was basically a Rakan one trick the entire series. Isn't necessarily negative, but it is something that I'm not entirely sure why it ended up being so pivotal. It's an aggressive support, doesn't really provide that much defense. And then just to kind of go a little forward in time, then they pick Tahm Kench in response to the Rakan, which doesn't feel like it's a response. I don't I don't think that this is actually like the pick into Rakan. I feel this doesn't change anything. Rakan is still allowed to do everything that he wants to do. Maybe it neutralizes the lane. Um, but without a support that can actually aggress onto Rakan, I don't see how any champion that they pick for the AD carry is going to actually be able to control the lane, which is what you want for Evelynn. Then the bans are Syndra, LeBlanc, Ornn, and Shen. So TSM picking or getting rid of more top-centric bans, champions, and then Cloud9 having more mid-centric bans. Syndra and LeBlanc are fairly hard carry champions. One of them is a signature pick of Bjergsen, so I suppose, sure, it's fine. These two picks are interesting because throughout the entire series, Cloud9 doesn't really show that they're willing to play, that they're going to play tanks top lane. They're trying to play more of these. I mean, I guess Set is a tank. They played Set twice, I think, top, but they built him more carry based with Bork instead of just full tank, which he could have gone in those games. Regardless, I mean, I guess these picks are okay, but they're not really picks that you'd go, all right, with Evelynn, perfect. That's exactly what we want to see, right? Um, maybe they are. Maybe they are. Maybe the idea is that if Cloud9 are trying to adapt, they're bringing out more damage from other roles. They're going to be looking for some stability and defense from the top side. I don't know if that necessarily is exactly what Cloud9 were thinking, but I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility, so can't really say otherwise. Maybe their preparation told them that this is something that they were going to do if they had these kinds of picks, but I don't know if that's really the case. And then Cloud9 pick Ashe. Ashe is stable, support style, bottom laner. And into Skarner is actually really good, and with Evelynn is really good because it allows Evelynn to kind of skirt past Skarner, not just in terms of ganking when she's 6, when Evelynn is 6, but also in the event that Skarner is trying to aggress onto her jungle. The map hacks on Ashe allows you to spot that out and either skirt around it or aggress onto it with your laners. So, lane-wise for this, I feel like it's Senna favored. But the pick was just more for the team than anything else. Again, I mean, when you pick Evelynn, I feel like you kind of warp your draft around Evelynn. Evelynn becomes the centerpiece of it. You don't really try to create like let's add in another magic damage dealer, or let's try to build on the one shots or the extra damage. You kind of just go with Evelynn will save us and win the day. Now, eventually their damage profile is a little weird, but we'll get to that. Then TSM pick Jace and Zilean for their solo laners. Jace is actually a pick you could argue was something that Vulcan, or sorry, not Vulcan, but Licorice would have picked. Licorice is someone that has picked Jace a lot throughout the season. So it is something that maybe is a takeaway, but also helps the rest of the composition. Not really. Maybe the idea is you pick Jace, and then you can't necessarily put Lucian in the top lane because it's not that beneficial for Lucian to be topside into Jace. Actually, that doesn't really help. That doesn't help TSM whatsoever because they pick Zilean, which ends up being having a hard time into Lucian specifically. So it kind of maybe that's the idea actually, to somehow force Niski to play the Lucian, and then have them pick an other top laner after several top laners have been banned away. That actually might be it. So you get rid of. So he doesn't have the choice of Lucian. He doesn't have the choice of Jace. He wouldn't have the choice of Set. He doesn't have the choice of Shen or Ornn. You basically hand deliver a good pick for Niski in pushing the Lucian to the mid lane so that he can win against the Zilean, which is important and valuable. But then you kind of screw over the top laner because the top lane meta doesn't necessarily have like all of these arrays of champions. But there are champions that go into. There's also the issue that Jace kind of has a good matchup into what's left, right? What is left? We're looking at Camille is left, Wukong was left. Nari is a champion that people pick. I don't know if it's necessarily a great pick. Um, Renekton is up, but it's not really great into Jace. So there's a whole bunch of options that are like, that's not super good into Jace. Um, and Wukong is supposed to be the counter pick, or that's what you ultimately use as the counter pick for Jace. I don't know if that necessarily is true. It might be. It might be. But I don't know if Wukong is seen as this strong laner, and against a strong laner in Jace, I can't imagine that that's super tilted in the Wukong's favor, or at all. Um, so with that all being said, final pick ends up being Wukong, because all of these picks have been kind of strangled away from Licorice. So you're either forcing them to put the Lucian, you give the Lucian, and then you don't have one of the better counters to Zilean in LeBlanc, which I believe been I believe that's a pretty bad matchup. They've actually kind of strangled themselves, right? Cloud9 actually kind of strangled themselves in the way that they banned, because then the responses were this, and then they look at that. Look at actually how kind of insane this draft went. I mean, you take into account the bans, take into account how they pick, and it all kind of started with the Lucian Evelynn start, right? Which don't necessarily need to be hotly contested by Cloud9. Cloud9 do not need to take it. They just need to have a response for it. But if they don't have a response for it, which they apparently didn't, then you can start doing things like this, where you take away top lane champions, and then force the Lucian to go mid, so that the top laner is kind of screwed. Let me just get the...
He will take the Lucian. They've already drafted. They can easily swap to the top side with the matchup here for Licorice facing Jace, and it is going to be the Wukong. Cloud9 were the first team to successfully use this Wukong, and they camped for Licorice on the top side, getting him to be a big carry, and kind of, as indicated from Nisky's solo queue.
So, yeah. So the matchup, I would imagine, is Jace favored. The jungle probably is Evelynn favored if you isolate it, but we'll get back to whether that's necessarily it actually is Evelynn favored based on the composition, because jungle is enabled largely by the lanes. Lucian has the win over the Zilean, and Senna should probably be doing well into Ashe. Tom, although I always underestimate how strong and aggressive Tom can be, but maybe I am underestimating it again. So maybe it's more even, or I feel like it's not super tilted. I feel like the bottom lane is not super tilted in one direction. It's just, I would imagine Senna wins it, but that I could be completely wrong. And even watching this game could just be freak accident that if Senna wins or if Ashe wins, and it's not really tilted in either direction, and it's just player based maybe. Doesn't matter. So compositionally, right? We see a lane that isn't necessarily winning, a lane that is winning, and a lane that is maybe winning, but mostly neutral. Which doesn't really help Evelynn whatsoever. Evelynn hasn't really been set up to get through the laning phase for free, which is how TSM played it in the previous game, where you don't need to do anything as TSM in order for the Evelynn to do really well. And generally, that's how Evelynn wants to play. If she doesn't have a responsibility on the map, she feels free, and it's such a good game for Evelynn. Now, the damage is interesting because it doesn't really feel that high on anyone. Like, eventually, by like the 30-minute mark, the only person who's doing actual damage is Evelynn. and then maybe you have Ashe if she can DPS. But Lucian's damage goes down quite a bit over time. Wukong really is only strong damage-wise if he's ahead. Otherwise, he's not really dealing that much damage in comparison to other potential picks or other champions in this game. Especially in comparison to Jace, or Senna, or Zillion. The scaling is just super high on TSM. Each champion is just better, except for the Skarner, who arguably doesn't scale better than Evelynn, but Evelynn is also kind of beholden to the rest of her team. And so if she doesn't have the team that can back her up, she's not really... It doesn't matter whether she outscales her direct lane opponent. And Rakan even is more... I guess it depends on what you're looking for, but there's nothing that screams Tahm Kench is necessary to prevent this from happening, right? I guess Tahm Kench was probably the response into the Skarner, but doesn't feel like it was that high value. So, I mean, here, just like the other games, TSM have the stronger draft. And I mean, here we see that Cloud9 don't have the pieces that made them better. We see, I mean, we have a supportive bottom lane. This is pretty characteristic of every bottom lane right now. You do have a carry jungle, but the problem is that it's not an early game ganking focused jungle. This is a like efficiency based farming style jungler that wants to hit 6 as fast as humanly possible so that she can start actually doing what she likes to do. This matchup, the Lucian versus Zillion matchup, is interesting. Lucian should win it, but then it's a question of, well, now Lucian's won it. Now he's what, 20 CS up? What does that mean? Does that help us somehow? Does that make us stronger? And then the Wukong comes in. It's really, I mean, it adds some CC, it adds some damage, but how does Cloud9 want to win? I would imagine through mid-game skirmishes, getting this really ahead, getting Wukong ahead, and if they are consistently ahead, if they can get a good roll on a dragon, so something like, in fact, pretty much exclusively Infernal Soul, then Cloud9 should feel really good. Even if they get something like Cloud or Ocean or Mountain, it's good for them, but it's not going to help them. Like, obviously it's good because it gives them extra free things, but it doesn't help them do what they want to do with their champions, right? Except for, I guess, Ocean or Mountain would help Ashe do what she wants to do. But the more front-loaded burst that Evelynn has, and Wukong has, and even Lucian has, is not really helped at all by anything other than Infernal. So, let's get into the game.
Piloting Illusion. And as you mentioned earlier in the previous game when we talked about Evelynn for the first time, having Evelynn in the jungle being this cross things here, taking tabs of all the summoner spells and whatnot.
This is going to be 1.5, but I am not going to go with the pause rule. Too limiting.
Overall global advantage with TPs does go over to TSM. However, Vulcan on the Tahm Kench, once he has a couple levels in the Abyssal Voyage, will be able to make
So TSM put down 2 wards onto one defending this entrance and then one on the Raptor camp. This is fairly common. I've seen several Evelynns do this. In fact, it's so common that Spiga's already on the Wolves. Spiga's already on the Wolves, and Evelynn is on the opposing Raptors. So everything is pretty fine. She's generally not able to stick around that long. And Spiga's actually saying, alright, I'm going to do Wolves, and then I'm going to go straight to Red. Because I know where the Evelyn went. So that was an early trade. It ended up working out for Licorice. They actually both have Conqueror, but I don't know if it's gonna stay that way. Maybe the missed that. Maybe the matchup isn't super Jace favored, or maybe it's just based on that level 1. It's probably actually based on that level 1.
That being said, you also have to worry about your mid lane because
and then afterwards, Jace just kind of blows past him. Niski not really able to do much for him. Hold on, let me actually look at that lane save for a second. Okay, so he probably shouldn't be getting hit with bombs. Okay, so if he's getting hit with a bomb, he should probably be returning fire at some point, but he just didn't. Gets the Q off.
And Niski's been putting in a lot of time with it. He's got the flash ignite for mid, so Bjergsen's goal is to try and farm from afar and not give up too much health, allowing him as a possible dive target.
Although the bomb, I believe, is farther away than the... so he misses, so... that's really unfortunate. And also kind of weird given how Evelyn normally plays, right? So Evelyn is going to go for higher percentage ganks than things that are basically removed, or not removed, things that can be avoided by flashing. Because Evelyn's time is really, really valuable. Every second that she's not doing a camp before 6 is inefficient because she's not getting 6 and she loses out on like 90% of her kit. So what she ended up doing was Raptors into Blue, Gromp, Wolves, Raptors, move towards top side, and then exit probably red, Krugs, or Krugs red. So it's not the worst for Blabber, but it's not the best. And then this ends up happening, and I'm not even going to comment on it. He should have just flashed. That's comment on it. Whatever. Look. It's over now. Gonna pretend it didn't happen.
After that game, getting his flash blown by Blabber there. What a
Wukong goes for a teleport, or is forced to teleport. Bjergsen had how many charges of his corrupting potion did he have left during this?
Getting his flash blown by Blabber there. What a there it is.
Niski goes for the solo kill. The Ardent Blaze barely missed Bjergsen. The very end of
So with the one corrupting potion, he's able to kind of come back in here. Blabber, or not, sorry, not Blabber, but Niski actually doesn't have his ignite or his flash anymore. Trading for a flash, and this is really tragic. Just on the mid laners for a second. So he doesn't have flash or ignite anymore, which means his kill pressure is entirely gone. Now he's used it, and then Zilean's kind of able to skirt past the lane, just bombing the minions and not really having to deal with any reprisal from Lucian, because Lucian cannot kill him without ignite. Also, importantly, look at the health and mana bar. Obviously, I indicated that. Whatever. Look at the mana and the health bar. Which basically means Niski has to leave on this wave because he cannot do anything. He was already kind of looking to leave anyway, seemingly. Maybe he was baiting. Maybe probably not. He just saw an opportunity and nearly killed Bjergsen. I don't know if he could have played it any better. It doesn't necessarily matter, but right now the state of the lane is he has to back, and Bjergsen actually will then can. Is he going to just kill these minions and then back? Or he can choose to... He might be able to choose to kill some of these minions and then let the wave like hold itself back and then return to a wave that's still on in his favor that he can destroy at any time. I mean, I know that he's staying. Licorice actually ends up going in here.
right, Spica up top side, looking for the kill onto Licorice here yet again. It is trouble in.
So that one is just, I mean, it's really difficult to do anything about.
Blabber there. What a Easter egg for TSM. Use it. Broken Blade catches him recalling. What?
So Licorice ends up
after that gank, getting his flash blown by Blabber there.
TPing in.
There it is.
Oh, Niski goes for the solo kill. The Ardent Blaze barely missed Bjergsen. The very end of that spell, if it could have connected, may have been just enough damage to get the kill. Niski forces the flash out of Bjergsen, but uses both of his own summoner spells here. So needs to quickly get this wave.
And the wave is actually not even in Licorice's favor at all. But Evelyn is very far away from being around him. And so this is probably greedy by Licorice. It ends up, I mean, he uses a gap closer to get on top of Broken Blade, just as Spica is on the top side. I wonder if that was potentially knowable.
There it is.
Oh, do it there with the slam and the thundering blow. Takes the kill. First blood for Broken Blade.
It was 100% knowable.
Did not want to use
Kill the Niski forces the flash out of Bjergsen, but uses both of his own summoner spells here. So needs to quickly get this wave pushed up and reset and get back in shot.
And that's the early question that you want to try and play off. I expect him to go with Blade of the Rune.
The only argument you could make is against that this was knowable is Blabber knows the timer on the Raptors, and if the Raptors are being taken efficiently, which you would imagine pro players usually do, especially early on, he would be going. He'd be at he would have taken blue, Gromp, and then gone back to his wolves, and then it's going to the Raptors. So maybe the idea is Licorice thinks best case scenario he's going to Raptors and he's not anywhere close to me, so I can go for these trades. But I don't even know if that ends up helping, if he ends up winning that anyway. Does he actually, what does it look like before? It just doesn't look like, really doesn't seem like it was in his favor, regardless.
And right now he's trying to push the lane instead of keeping it there, trying to deny minions because he wants to get his recall off and spend that money. Serrated Dirk early on for him, killing Licorice again with the flash available. So big for TSM.
Trying to think if maybe there's, we look at this wave, so it just came in, it's at inhibitor right now, the next wave is at inhibitor. Shoving it is fine, because because he'll be able to leave and then he'll come back to a neutral state, which will be in Broken Blade's favor, pretty significantly in his favor actually.
Now he's trying to push the lane instead of keeping it there, trying to deny minions because he wants to get his recall off and spend that money. In the season when they drafted the Wukong and focused on the top side and got Licorice fed into a really big carry position, this game's going to be very different for them, but Blabber for Cloud9 should be able to take away the Dragon on the bottom side of the map.
So Blabber, I mean, this is a timer, this is a timing that Blabber takes all the time. His lanes are able to move faster. He's on red side, so the opening is right there. There's no difficulty in getting to it. So everything is great for this, for an early dragon. It's not going to be hugely impactful in these early levels, but it'll help them get closer to Soul. Now, it being Infernal means that it's not going to be an Infernal Soul, which is really unfortunate. And in fact, it's also not going to be an Ocean Soul, so it's going to be either Mountain or Cloud. Mountain is probably the worst one if Cloud9 gets the Soul, because all it does is help them survive a little longer, but that doesn't really matter, because they're all relatively squishy champions that don't build that much armor, except for, of course, Wukong, or armor and MR, except for Wukong, of course. Spica is back on the top side, not letting the Wukong live, or, well, I mean, letting him live, but not letting him live peacefully. He did actually skip his camp, so this isn't. So Spica's not playing like super efficiently. He's just focusing a lot of attention on getting Broken Blade as much as he can, giving him as many resources, giving him as much time as possible. Blabber is about 3 camps ahead, so that is positive. Blabber is kind of been allowed to get his camps without too much reprisal. The issue, of course, being that Licorice is now falling significantly behind very early on, which is very problematic for playing around the top side. And I guess you can still play around mid lane, even though Bjergsen at this point is probably unkillable to Blabber and Niski due to Zillion's uh, thing that his chrono shift. And the real dangerous place is going to be the bottom lane. But Evelyn generally likes isolated targets. Should be fine though. So Evelyn doesn't really have the option to go topside. Doesn't really have the option to go mid. She has basically an option to go and path towards bottom lane. And she actually is doing that right now. The next camp is going to be the Scuttle Crab, and then she's going to move to her blue side camps.
For C9 to start calling their tax guys, pay those taxes, get the QSSs up and running, or else you're going to be in a bad spot. Speaking of a bad spot, Bjergsen has to activate the ulti here to survive the culling from Niski, who once again...
So here, Niski could have maybe canceled his ultimate so that he doesn't kill Bjergsen during the chrono shift,
Scaling options for them, and Bjergsen off of the
which ends up actually healing Bjergsen.
So really the question is, Ladder now level 6 on Evelyn. Can he turn the tides for Cloud9? Because this is a must-win game scenario for them, and TSM have come out with the early lead.
So I mean here we see that it's not super tilted on one side. Bit of a lead on the Ashe, so okay, Blabber is level 6 now, so he can actually do something. He can look for something. He got the Scuttle Crab, but he's gonna be going to the bottom side camps. I think that makes the most sense.
With a plan B, because plan A was to focus top triangle of the map, play off of your solo lane matchups here.
Niski gets the blue buff, which will actually be very helpful for him in getting the in being able to maybe force the Zillion out, but Zillion is probably also going to be getting the blue buff relatively soon. And with an uncontested Rift Herald because of the Wukong's disadvantages and the fact that Blabber was on the bottom side of the map anyway, you're looking at a lot of really good things going for TSM. Evelyn is he's level 6 and still being kind of demolished by the camps. An unfortunate side effect of playing Evelyn. He's not necessarily behind, I don't think, but yeah. Yeah. Let me actually just... I mean, there's nothing that you can really do here. Evelyn can't really help shove the wave in. He's just in a precarious spot. He maybe just backs there. I know that it's not going to be efficient and it's not going to be helpful for him, but it's obviously better than dying to the gank here that Evelyn cannot cover. And if we know that the blue side camps are up, which I think you can pretty much guess based on the fact that Bjergsen did not have blue or did not seem to get blue recently, then this is Skarner being on this side of the map, especially even under cases where it wasn't necessarily efficient to go for it, is probably this is definitely knowable.
Now once again, it's Licorice face check. He tries to get himself away using the ulti, but now there comes the pull drag.
And I mean, can't really do anything about it. I think just
once again, it's Licorice face check. He tries to get himself away using the ulti, but now there comes the pull.
Speaking kind of dragged him out of Broken Blade's auto check range. Obviously, it was to get him as far away from safety as possible, but so I mean, the bottom lane is, or not the bottom lane, the top lane is really hurting. The bottom lane is actually kind of is really going well for Cloud9. 15 CS up. Not entirely sure how or why, because it was they were about a wave behind just before here. Not even a wave behind. They were 5 CS, and then it became
stats breakdown that we had after the TSM versus Golden Guardian series.
Really painful.
Investing time towards the top half, helping him. There comes the pull, drag him straight.
Why?
This game 3-0.
He just like consistently got worse and worse just randomly. They must have got shoved out somehow. How did they get pushed out? Is it the threat of the crystal arrow, maybe? It must be. Because as soon as the crystal arrow comes in, then the disparity really starts hitting. Or maybe Sven has allowed the wave to accumulate. Or no, wait. No, the wave. Maybe Doublelift has allowed the wave to accumulate rather. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of accumulated. It's not to the same amount. That's really unfortunate. Didn't get that. Blabber ended up basically just getting a bit of CS denial. About 12 CS, 15 CS denied from the TSM bottom lane, so that's kind of okay. Here we see Broken Blade actually shifted all the way down because the wave is now basically frozen on top side, right? If we look, they spawn the Herald.
But it doesn't matter. They get him with the ultimate this time around. And again, you bring up the top lane focus from
right.
TSM. That was a huge thing where they're drafting the.
So they spawn the Herald.
This time around, though, they get the entire turret with their Rift Herald placement.
But these are still alive.
What a phenomenal start.
So that's like guaranteed freeze. You could hold that for a very long time. And this might allow Licorice to come back ahead. It also forces Broken Blade to shift towards the bottom lane because there's nothing that you can really do. But if you shift Doublelift topside, then he has a dead lane, so you don't really have the option to switch them. In fact, the person who made the dead lane was Broken Blade himself. So despite getting the gold from the tower, obviously it's valuable. They kind of ruined the lane, for at least momentarily, until it's unlocked. But, I mean, if we can look at how Wukong is playing, and then speaking kind of like, hold on. If we look at the way that Wukong is playing, I mean, he's just going to hold it for as long as he can. And then the lead will diminish over time. Or the CS lead will. Obviously, the kills will not probably go down. Let's just actually look here. So, Blabber immediately leaves, right? Or leaves after the dive attempt. And then Broken Blade's already here, so the uneven numbers basically tell Cloud9, okay, we have to leave. So they cede position on the dragon.
Make it work on one of these lanes, and yet no kill with both of those big cooldowns takes away so much of the offensive power here for C9 early in stages, and TSM start up the dragon because they think that's enough.
Blabber moving in, wants to be able to seal it away. Instead, it's going to be secured by TSM.
TSM start up the dragon because they think that's enough.
I mean, I don't think they know that the smite is around, so it actually gets pretty low. I mean, 200 is really, really low. It's like dangerously low. But they end up getting it anyway. It's pretty fine. Broken Blade has nowhere to really be or go. He can, I guess, sit around the jungle, which is actually annoying for Evelyn, but doesn't really. It would be a pretty dangerous spot if he tried that. The lane is finally kind of moving towards him, and he's immediately going to give it back to Licorice, it seems. Oh, no. Okay. He's waiting for the. He's waiting. Also because of the threat of the Evelyn. He does not have ultimate, but is still threatening. Broken Blade should not die to this. He should not die to this, by the way. Okay, the minions are coming to him. He should be perfectly fine. Why is he walking forward? And he dies. Okay. He didn't need to walk forward at all. Don't know about that. Until that ulti is ready to go, or Broken Blade overcommits himself into a fight here against Licorice. Broken Blade happy to just play this patiently. There's nothing to really fight. Kind of walked over here instead of being down here, and then kind of progressively, if he needs to, he can kind of hug this area because Evelyn can't just like flash over this wall. But Evelyn could potentially be around here. Like, if he was already wary of Evelyn around here, why would he not be wary of Evelyn being in this bush? Obviously, this is probably more hindsight than anything else, but just a slight optimization. It doesn't really... It's not, like, a major takeaway from Broken Blade. It is a shutdown, though. 600 gold is massive. That is 2 kills, in fact, basically given to the Evelyn, which is really, really bad. And of course, also, the advantage has been diminished ever so slightly. I don't know if he's going to get any tower or plate gold. Most likely not. But we'll see. I don't know why this is a Bork. Don't know what champion is building a massive amount of health that he would need to use a Blade of the Ruin King. I feel like, especially against a Zilean, you're kind of allowed to go scaling option. This matchup ended up being pretty neutral. I feel like it should still be Lucian favored, but the match was just neutralized. Maybe it's player based.
Get Licorice some breathing room. He does not get
Also, frankly, I'm pretty sure this should be a an Essence Reaver game by Sven, because the outside of Evelyn, the damage profile of Cloud9 is fairly low.
Evelyn without the ultimate, though, definitely going to have a lot less possibility of getting those 100% to zeros, and Spica's looking to punish while that cooldown is not available.
Yep, if Evelyn tries to fight Skarner on top of Spire, she has a very, very bad time. Her base stats are incredibly low, and Skarner gets a lot of free money on top of that. Now he doesn't have to pull on the Vulcan here. Stopwatch will be able to keep the Cloud.
Ben actually walks into Rakan entrance, and then bomb. Instead of Vulcan walking out of the bomb, he actually eats the bomb and then dies with the bomb.
Oh my goodness, TSM with such a big victory in the blue side invade.
I mean, to be fair, that interaction may not be known.
It's looking so difficult for them in this must-win.
So here, TSM are pretty handily in the lead. We're fighting over position on the blue. I mean, here, this is a case of, I mean, Sven actually just walked forward. I don't know if that really changes anything. If Sven just plays further out, that it would change anything. Like, maybe he doesn't step forward this way, he more steps up towards Blabber. Kind of like in this arc. Better for him, but again, it doesn't really change anything.
The Zilean makes the plays 1, 2, 3. It's 2 kills and an extra life for Broken Blade.
As Bjergsen takes 2 lives, he also saves 1, reviving Broken Blade. Oh my goodness, TSM.
Is there a teleport on this play too? There was a teleport. Broken Blade ends up teleporting down. Then gets the Zilean ultimate.
1, 2, 3. It's 2 kills and an extra life for Broken Blade.
As Bjergsen takes 2 lives, he also saves 1, reviving Broken Blade. Oh my goodness, TSM with such a big victory in the blue side invade.
So this is very good. Now, it's actually necessary for TSM. They are very willing to take these fights, but they don't necessarily need to take those fights. Because they were already going to outscale Doublelift, just in position for a Dawning Shadow. Isn't even really that much of a threat to Niski, so he can't actually walk anywhere.
They do not spread out for it. The Devour doesn't
The
take off the bomb. It just means only get other stuff targeted on top of you, and since it eats up the bomb, it's gonna explode in your stomach anyway. Bombs do for it.
Indigestion from that one, man. Not good time.
The teleport by Broken Blade wasn't super great because he just immediately died, but with Zilean you kind of have the ability to go for that anyway.
And when you're playing a tank Skarner build like this, it's really just going in to be an initiator, pop the ulti, like just have that meatball frontline presence.
Also, importantly, when you're looking at a composition that pretty much outscales you pound for pound, you probably should be going for items that work towards negating that scaling or fighting against it. Maybe not negating it, but you can try to play against it. And the Blade of the Ruin King does not help that at all.
Against mostly AD comps is vastly preferable because your 2 best items after you grab that Cinderhulk.
So now we're at the 15-minute mark. I don't think either team are really set up for the Herald. Or should go for it.
AB damage, but it's an assassin with AB damage, and he's not looking at assassin.
Playing fairly cautiously. Usually at this point someone would have made some sort of random error where they just start doing the Herald. Oh, Blabber is kind of caught out. Did he miss the ult?
Generally, unless you catch him out. Let's see what they can do about it, though. So much vision here from TSM as well. Makes it really difficult for Cloud9 to slip in. Sven?
Oh, Biofrost is going after him. Vulcan looking to keep Sven alive here, but these guys got to do a whole
I think he
lot of work
did.
getting them-
Really difficult for Cloud9 to slip in. Sven?
Oh, Biofrost is going after him. Vulcan looking to keep
He 100% did. Wait, how does he miss that?
Sven alive here, but these guys got to do a whole lot of work getting themselves away. Biofrost looking to stay on top of Cloud.
And then on the other side, Biofrost is able to be very aggressive. There's no one that can really stop it. Sven doesn't have any mobility. Then they're getting suppressed. And it is just a complete routing by Cloud9. Cloud9 not really allowed to do anything that they normally do in this game, actually. They don't really have the priority to do anything. They don't really have the lanes to do anything. The only lane that really screwed up was the Wukong lane on the top side.
They see Sven, they go right for him, and even though Vulcan can devour him up, Biofrost can charm them up afterwards.
I still don't understand how Blabber didn't kill Broken Blade. I feel like he definitely hit that, but I mean, I guess he didn't. There just isn't enough damage, survivability, or anything to kind of combat against TSM's composition. So, and we need to take stock of the fact that outside of top lane, no one really made like horrendous errors. Blabber's pathing was fine. He did kind of interrupt it for a level 3 on to onto Broken Blade, which obviously would have been nice for them to hit, but then they just get. I mean, it was basically a 3v2. Spiga hightails it out of there. I mean, maybe you could argue that Niski didn't get the advantage he wanted mid lane, but he didn't suffer too much.
We're seeing what this looks like when you're unable to have your early lane priority.
And he did have it seemed like he had priority throughout most of it. And general control over that lane. Same thing with the bottom lane. Generally they had control over the lane. And they did play around they did kind of have an early dragon, right? So if we go back just to what was the second dragon? Okay. Must just be a man of myth low and starting with a lot of money on top of that. Now fight here against Licorice. Broken Blade.
TSM evens up the draft. And again, you bring up the top lane focus from TSM. That was a huge thing where they're drafting the Renekton Nidalee multiple times. This time around, though, they get the entire turret with their Rift-Tail placement. Broken Blade just awesome. So this is actually a mistake by TSM, right? They kind of screw this up. They give over a freeze with these 3 minions and then these. Which is not great. Doesn't end up hurting too much, I guess, but it definitely isn't optimal. It's because they go for this play. Oh man. I was trying to understand why the timing was weird for the dragon. Because it seemed as though Cloud9 weren't positioned for it, and they were, but they went for a dive that didn't end up working over getting the dragon, which I think was a much better, much more obvious win condition than getting the potential dive onto double lift, which they didn't end up getting anyway. It's not like they really screwed it up too much. Although,
Blabber did not use his charm. He did not get the charm off on anyone.
But C9 bringing their jungler in this bottom lane, expending both flash and ultimate of the Evelynn, will not find a kill.
Yep, Evelynn has so few options here because Bjergsen constantly under tower has flash, has
I feel like instead of going for the play on the tower, you have to go for the play on the dragon. It's the far more obvious play, and I mean they actually even kind of looked at it right here. But as soon as TSM kind of show that Broken Blade's not on the top side and it's actually down here, obviously there's no reason why Spica wouldn't be on this side of the map now. And then of course Bjergsen has a priority on the mid lane. Cloud9 have to leave, right? So maybe a little greedy. If they got the kills, would they have gotten that dragon too? Maybe. Maybe it was a calculation based on what they thought was likely to happen after the dive. Back to where I was. So after this play, looking at the Herald, the second Herald was already taken, I think, by the time I.
This is going to be TSM Mountain Dragon after those kills. Well,
Drake is alive right now. TSM has got to do a whole lot of work.
This is the kills from there, and then they grab the dragon, which I think is obviously the more readily valuable objective, especially because every mountain hurts Cloud9 so much. Because every mountain that is taken against Evelynn just is super painful. Honestly, I'm just like blown away that the last caress doesn't kill Broken Blade there. I don't know how he missed. Obviously, probably that the animation doesn't actually cover that whole. It covers more than the actual hitbox, but it kind of blooms out, but it doesn't hit everything inside of the semicircle. Little iffy. Okay. So the Herald is still an objective. Actually, we were a minute ahead of this.
Can't get the ulti off in time. He is the first casualty here. TSM still well, and Spica gets away, but he's on a sort of magical quest behind enemy lines, trying to get back to his friends. Skarner's magical journey will end with a happy ending as the credits roll and he walks back to his place here. Doublelift
actually ends up getting the bottom or the mid lane tower, and then because Cloud9 are reset away, this objective is theirs because Cloud9 couldn't really take it. I guess they could have. Could have. How low was? Oh no, Blabber died. No.
And open up an area for them to push. But because Spica instantly ulted Blabber, Blabber could not use his own Evelynn ult to get out of that. Their plan was to quickly.
When did Blabber start building these needlessly large rods? He knew the mountain was a thing. So I think that if you assume that you might even lose out on one dragon, you have to take. I think you have to go Void Staff, which is less expensive, which makes it a lot better for a generally low econ role. Even though I don't think that people are taking camps away from Evelynn on Cloud9, but the Void Staff seems like it would have a lot more value because of the extra resistances that are going to be on Cloud9 or TSM without really having to do anything. Okay, Broken Blade is super dead. It's a bit of a mistake there. Kind of like the second or third time this has happened. Second time this game.
You said it earlier on in this series, Kobe. At the start of this year, up to the first half of summer, this team was 35.
Broken Blade not really respecting the Evelynn as much as he probably should be. Probably arguable that you can't give that much respect, but and of course Licorice kind of committing the same sin. It's gonna be a trade. It is gonna be a trade. See right there, it hits, but not on the previous play. Maybe it did hit, and I just saw something weird. Good stopwatch bait, and then Biofrost comes in to save. So right now, Cloud9 are trying to like scrap their way back into this game.
This series, Bjergsen baits him in, but yeah, you know, Niski, he feels like there's just so much.
But this 40-second, this dragon is really pivotal. This is basically where the entire game is decided. Although arguably, the fight where Vulcan ate a bomb was maybe the fight that was more pivotal, but okay, they get a Herald up to kind of push against here. I don't know if they need to be on the tower. They could probably just let the maybe have hit it a bit, but then walked over into the jungle to allow to get the team position. But maybe they're fine anyway, because they have such a lead.
And it looks like Cloud9 are admitting that maybe they can't contest this, as now they will move towards that bottom side river area. This is a critical fight for Cloud9. They cannot afford to lose a team fight here and give TSM both the kills and that Drake. Drake down to half HP. Blabber's hanging out on the flank, looking for a chance to go in here, but Spica.
Okay, Blabber is on a flank. He's not really able to get away.
Blabber trying to get away. No, thank you, sir.
How do they see him?
And that Drake. Drake down to half HP. Blabber's hanging out on the.
Oh, because he's on the. They see him off of this. So they see him off of that. He can't really flank. And he's completely cut off from his team, right? He can't go anywhere.
Flank, looking for a chance to go in here, but Spica has him figured out. Chasing after him here with a Predator. Last caress going to be used. Flash going to be used. Blabber trying to get away. No, thank you, sir. Broken Blade grabs the kill onto the Cloud9 jungler, but the trade is.
And shoving everything onto Blabber does open up the Baron. This is interesting. I saw a lot of praise for this specific play, where TSM focused on to Blabber more than anyone else, more than the dragon itself. That's probably the higher percentage play. That's probably the higher percentage play, at least immediately. It's the lower risk play at the moment. But it might be higher risk later on in the game. Although I guess you have to take into account the fact that they're such a lead, so maybe it doesn't really matter. Maybe the assumed risk at this point in the game, and the fact that they scale isn't necessarily that bad. But what I mean by that is giving over potential soul point is not super great. Now Cloud9 can't really contest this, so
Cloud9 must respond. They cannot give away a 23-minute Baron on this game that they must not lose. TSM looking to make sure they do, as now the Baron is down to 5,000 HP. They tried to get the culling to put work in onto the Baron instead. Cloud9 make the call, let it go. They know that they cannot engage 4v5 like this. They don't have a jungler to try and steal. Licorice looked like he had a cheeky thought about that blast cone there for a second, but decided against it. And TSM, 6,000 gold ahead, 23 minutes into the game, all 5 players wearing purple. This is a great spot to be in.
So, the it's obviously much easier to just kill Blabber, right? Maybe Blabber shouldn't be going for that flank. I mean, obviously, he probably shouldn't be, but what's the alternative? What's the other play for TSM? I mean, arguably, they could just go forward, right? Where's Bjergsen? Like right here. Kill this. No real entrance for Wukong, so it's at best 4v5. At least for now. They're pretty close. Bjergsen could potentially double bomb, but there's flash on Sven. I feel like no matter what choice TSM makes, it's a winning play, no matter what. Because of the way that Cloud9 were kind of forcing the dragon more than letting the dragon play out and or letting TSM take the dragon, and then trying to aggress onto them through that. But right now, like, they're leashing the dragon, basically. And if TSM decide, okay, we're just gonna fight you for it, then they kill him. Now, they made the maybe smarter decision. I don't know if it's super praiseworthy, because any play basically is winning for TSM.
Blabber's hanging out on the flank, looking for a chance to go in here, but Spica has him figured out. Chasing after him here with a Predator. Last caress gonna be used. Flash gonna be used. Blabber trying to get away. No, thank you, sir. Broken Blade grabs the kill onto the Cloud9.
Nowhere that Blabber can really go, and I don't know if I don't really think that Cloud9 needs to aggress onto that dragon, like start the dragon. I feel like that is the real problem.
If you find him on the flanks, he just doesn't have to give up. He's got so much speed. You take out the enemy jungler, and TSM, they're starting up the Baron. They see this series in their eyes.
Cloud9 must respond. They cannot give away a 23-minute Baron on this game that they must not lose. TSM looking to make sure they do, as now the Baron is down to 5,000 HP. They tried to get the culling to put work in onto the Baron. Instead, Cloud9 make the call, let it go. They know that they cannot engage 45 like this. They don't have a jungler to try and steal. Licorice looked like he had a cheeky thought about that blast cone there for a second, but decided against it. And TSM, 6,000 gold ahead.
I feel like no matter what they do, the play is just going to work out for TSM at that point. They have the Baron. I feel like they could have gotten the mountain soul point. Mountain Dragon probably was actually on the table. They just went maybe for the higher percentage play at the time, but the higher percentage play overall is getting the Drake. So it's probably a wash. I think it's debatable whether one is better than the other. Oh, but I don't know how Blabber, by the way, got here. Like, this is the deepest flank I've ever seen in my life. His entire team is locked under the base, except for Niski, who's walking to the base. But Blabber is way over here and goes in the river. Like the deepest possible flank I could ever imagine. How did he get spotted, by the way?
Looking more coordinated on top of it. Now with the Baron buff, with the 2-1 lead.
What does Blabber do that lets him get spotted here?
Constantly with the answers and looking more coordinated on top of it. Because in this series they have been on fire constantly with the answers and looking more coordinated on top of it. Now with the
oh, cause of the oh, that's cheeky. Okay. Took me a second. Alright, found it.
It seems like they've passed that breaking point because in this series they have been on fire.
Mid lane.
And looking more coordinated on top
Control
of
ward.
Now with the Baron buff, with the 2-1 lead in the series. They're looking for Blabber again.
Here they go. Blabber once again going to be pulled in by Spica.
I mean, there's no real reason why he should be there.
Is so difficult for this Evelyn to get away from once Spica has an idea where Blabber is prowling around. TSM are pushing into the Cloud9 base, looking to stop their 7-year streak of going to Worlds. Inhibitor number 1, that mid lane inhib, is wiped off the map just before 25 minutes. TSM back away and regroup towards the bottom lane.
Yep, Bjergsen there on the Zillion. Look like he's going to go try and get that last minion wave to usher it up. With a minute and a half left.
So now this is kind of going through the motions. Let's actually look at. I didn't check out what the optimal Baron looks like. So if we just look at the map right now, as soon as they take it, which is when they should be making the decision of how they're going to move around the map. I can understand why they went as 5 basically up mid, because the danger of Blabber, he is able to kill targets still. Even though they're behind, he is able to kill targets.
Looks like he had a cheeky thought about that blast cone there for a second, but decided against it. And TSM, 6,000 gold ahead. 23 minutes into the game, all 5 players.
For the past 2 years, even before they
So they kind of go as 5 up the mid lane.
Back-to-back years and having to fight through so much. It seems like they've passed that breaking point because in this series they have been on fire constantly with the answers and looking more coordinated on top.
Don't really want to leave any stragglers, so they move as 5 around the map. Not efficient use of the Baron, but it is the smartest use, I think.
Once Spica has an idea where Blabber is prowling around, TSM are pushing into the Cloud9 base, looking to stop their 7-year streak of going to.
And they'll still have about a minute and a half of the Baron after their reset. Or if they want to move down to the bottom lane, that's fine too. I think this makes sense as well, going down the objective that is up, going through the next objective being the dragon. So go through the bottom side, jungle, and then you can
I mean, they've got
put
an
down your
easy
vision
line
here.
as long as Spica just stands in the front. It's going to make it so difficult for Cloud9 to engage. Even with
TSM
Valor coming back up, he's got no ultimate, he's got
getting
no
their
flash.
wave
The
up.
Evelyn flanks are not a danger to TSM. The Evelyn flanks are a danger
So
to
again, they are just
TSM taking down that tier 2 turret there in the bottom
playing
lane now,
mostly
pushing towards the
together.
tier 3.
Why
I mean,
did
they've got an easy
Jace
front line
move
as long as Spica just stands in the
down?
front. It's going to make it so difficult for Cloud9 to engage. Even with Valor coming back up, he's got no ultimate, he's got no
I
flash.
see.
The
He
Evelyn
almost
flanks are not a danger to TSM.
to the
Evelyn
mid
flanks
lane
are
so
a
that
danger
it
to
pushes
TSM.
in. I don't know if that was necessary, but I guess it's fine.
Now pushing towards the tier 3 in the base.
Also, they don't have teleport. I didn't even mention that. They do not have teleport to be able to go for any cheeky plays anyway.
TSM will take down the bottom lane in him. It's 2 inhibs down, and TSM with Baron pushing towards Nexus turrets. Cloud9, 5v5. They must find some sort of a way to defend this.
So here, I mean, they're just
as
as5 going up the lane. I mean, as5, they're also the most effective anyway. Blabber gets hit up by Spica. Spica's, I mean, Blabber is dead due to the zillion bombs.
Started this season looking so damn good, but TSM have risen to the occasion. They have taken down the Nexus turret. They will
And
on the Cloud9 roster for the first time in
that
5 years.
is World's qualification. So, I mean, I talked about the difficulties of the draft and how it doesn't follow Cloud9's style anyway. So even if this was someone's style, it's not Cloud9's. And I feel like even there's no team that makes it's a really big mess of a draft, I think, from Cloud9. I think the bottom lane is fine. The mid lane is really suspect. Top lane is really suspect, and the jungle is really suspect. Not even because they couldn't play the champions; they were perfectly fine on the champions. Or, I mean, maybe you could argue if I wanted to do like real scrutiny of each individual player, I'm sure I could find things from every player that would make me think that they weren't perfectly fine. But it's not really the point of why I do this. I like looking at the intentions of teams as a whole and the decision making around the teams. But the draft just seems really difficult to play. I don't know what the optimal team fight for this draft looks like. I don't know what the optimal win condition looks like. I don't think they knew. I guess it would be more pick oriented, right? You'd have Wukong on a side lane, Lucian on a side lane. You could use Ashe Arrow to pick people off. You have the threat of the Evelyn, so maybe that's it. But it's not really that. It seems like it would lose a lot of its agency if it falls behind. So, yeah. Unfortunate for Cloud9. Had a dominant, like 75% of the splits. Yeah, spring and half of summer was very good for Cloud9. Win-loss wise. But I don't really know if they massively underperformed in this game. I feel like they performed pretty much to their standard. They just didn't draft to what they were successful on. And I don't know why that is. Maybe that's they were trying to adapt to the meta and it just didn't work, or because they got away from what they thought was successful, or whatever. I'm not part of the organization, so I can't really say. But it just seems as though they kind of moved too far away from where they were already inherently comfortable, and they never found themselves back on the compositions and on the picks that really worked out for them. As for TSM, I think that they played drafts really cleanly. I think that they played the majority of the games very cleanly. I think that they might have taken a few more fights than they probably should have. Probably could have been picked off less, and those kinds of things are going to get punished at a higher level, higher being World Championship level, against high-level international competition. But for North American standards, I think that they're really leveling up, and if they can keep in this form and draft like this, not specifically this composition, but draft in a way that kind of runs counter to what the opposing team wants to do, then I think that they're going to be very successful moving on. And it's almost like a pleasant surprise, frankly. Because I thought Cloud9 was going to do really well in this game. Because I thought that they were kind of moving back to their picks. Didn't seem to, though. So we'll see how TSM goes. I'm Rojo. That's it. Bye.